Good day. My name is Armando Rendon. I'm editor of Somos and Escrito magazine, the Latino literary online magazine. And today with me is Scott Duncan, who's senior editor, and we have Jenny Irizary, who is assistant editor, two of my right-hand people on the magazine. And I am going to pretty much turn it over to them because we have a guest with us today who is renowned in many, many ways, Ernest Hogan. He is a premier writer of Chicano science fiction, very innovative in that regard. I think I've heard you referred to as the godfather of science fiction, of Chicano science fiction.
The father or whatever. Yeah. It's been big. I'm one of the first to actually have a career in it, so that makes me the
right.
And I'm older now.
So you're a groundbreaker in many ways, and we want to start off with just telling us a little bit of yourself, where you live, and how you spend your term writing. Are you working on something right now? Just kind of get us started and give us a little background about yourself, Ernest.
Okay, a little basic intro. Yeah, I was born in East LA. The name Hogan comes from my father's side of the family. They were New Mexico Irish, kind of like Billy the Kid. In fact, my family helped get Billy the Kid arrested at one point. So that's our contact with history there. So that might be there. My mother's family were basically from Mexico, and that they're my mother's maiden name is Garcia. I usually tell people that to try, because the name usually trips them up. And I've been interested in strange stuff all my life. I kind of grew up in the 50s watching like Space Patrol and Commando Cody and all these things, and it was science fiction was sort of all around me with television and movies and comic books, and I didn't really think it was anything that strange about me wanting to get in there and write it until until basically I started to get published, and then it became, I suddenly realized, oh my God, these people back east just don't know what to make of me, and it's kind of creating a weird stumbling block. Besides with the weird stuff I write, it's so that is the three novels are CORTEZ on Jupiter, High Aztec, and Smoking Mirror Blues. They're right now published by a publisher named Strange Particle Press, and they're you can get them through Amazon in both ebook and paperback, and I've also published all kinds of short stories all over the place. I think I'm slacking, and then I look back over the last couple of years and find out I published it further. In fact, I even just last week, in the middle of this pandemic, I found out that a book with one of my stories is going to be published, next month in the middle of this all. So yeah, I keep going there, and I keep going there, and I've got a lot to stay. So, we're looking forward to your questions. Yeah.
Okay. Well, you now live in Arizona.
Yeah.
And so that's not a big jump from New Mexico. It's sort of, I just went down south a little bit and west. How did you get to Arizona? And is this where you've done most of your writing, in Arizona, or?
I started in California. What happened was basically I'm also an artist. I was actually doing some artwork and for a publisher that did like early role-playing games, Ken St. Andre. He did a science fiction game called Starfaring, which I did some cartoony illustrations for, and people like that. And then he was like, some game publisher wanted him to do a role-playing game, kind of Dungeons and Dragons type things about set in an Aztec world. And so he basically called on me to help with it. And so he lived in Phoenix, and I, one weekend I decided I just hop on a Greyhound, go down there and and we'd spent some time working on this thing. It ended up not materializing for all kinds of reasons we probably don't need to go into here, but at there, we ended up going to a party of science fiction fans in Phoenix, and there I met the Emily Davenport, who's also published novels. Her latest are Medusa Uploaded and Medusa in the Graveyard. They're published by Tor Books. You can probably find them out there. I met her at this party, and it basically kind of changed our lives, and we ended up for a while doing a lot of corresponding, passionate love letters, and then I was sort of a jet age Romeo, giving Southwest Airlines all my money to go out there, and finally I figured I better just come out here, and finally we ended up getting married. So I literally, to use that old cliche, crossed the burning deserts for my love. So.
About 30,000 feet, probably.
Oh yeah, that's it.
Well, Scott, Jenny, if you have a question, I know they're burning questions in line.
Oh, sure. I mean, I think for the bios, we need to use Jet Age Romeo, because I like that, the sound of that. So, I mean, so you read a blog called Chicano Nautica, and you often bring up like Chicanonaut and that kind of idea. And of course, you have the Chicano Nautica Manifesto. Yeah. And call me a little slow, but to me, I'm like, oh, so he's kind of like, he's in the barrio. And like, wait a second, no, he's not in the barrio, searching the barrio. He's going out the barrio. He's bringing the barrio with him, like you say, pretty overtly in the Chicano Nautica Manifesto.
That sort of defines me. My father was an airline mechanic, and he moved us from East LA to West Covina. Now, just before he died, he finally told me, the reason he did that because West Covina is equal difference between three airports. So he knew he would be able to find a job and be able to get back and forth to it at any time. So, but West Covina was very different from East LA. It was just very, and in a weird way, I was always sort of I seem to be a fish out of water, just quite naturally. That seems to think, but the whole idea of the Chicano now, the Chicano who's going into territory that he isn't that he isn't really thought to be his natural habitat, like science fiction. But also looking back in my science fiction fandom and at conventions and things like that, I was probably the only brown face in the room a lot of times, and this has changed in recent years. But I kind of see I'm kind of see myself as an explorer. I'm going off, and often the strange world that I'm exploring is the world of Anglo-America, which I still consider, a lot of this stuff considered to be the norm in America. I basically, where I was growing up and all that, I consider to be kind of weird, and it's probably why I have sort of a science fiction outlook. Like I'm the alien coming into this strange, a different society.
Well, the other thing I want to mention along those lines, I mean, I myself, I can understand that a bit, being my name being Scott Duncan and having my own dealers in Anglo-America, but I want to say, like, kind of you upend the typical science fiction genres often. Like, I think we talked in the other interview on the panel about kind of like how the other is portrayed, right? And like most of science fiction, and like you can say, like even cyberpunk, which you're associated with a lot, is mostly about mostly an Anglo person or Anglo person, a little bit of like paint on them, kind of slumming and going about and being into the scary parts of the other. And like now you kind of turned it on the head. I mean, I think in your Uno, Dos, Tres novella, like you kind of spoof that idea, like you're going into the barrio and like you're in this scary place, and the reporter needs this guide and this / bodyguard to go into a part of town, and it's maybe the question is, I mean, you're turning these genres on their head. Do you think it comes from, it's something that you're consciously doing, or is it coming just from just the Chicano outlook?
Partially that also when I was first reading science fiction, like back around the late 60s, early 70s, there was a phenomenon happening called the New Wave, which was there were like writers in America like Harlan Ellison, Norman Spinrad, and also there was like Michael Moorcock was editing New Worlds magazine in England, and which was also that was kind of taking science fiction to sort of a different territories. Kind of sometimes it was like avant-garde. Other times they were just writing about subject matters and things that were different. And I always kind of thought that was quite natural. To me, experimental science fiction should be kind of redundant, because I always see that we're always testing the waters, testing reality, and testing where the future is going to go. And also the fact that I seem to be an other, a fish out of water, no matter what, an alien. I didn't realize that. I just thought that this was just the nature of reality, and then after a while you get into society and school and all that, and suddenly you realize, oh yeah, that's right. I seem to do things a little different from everybody else, or most people, other people, But the otherness has been kind of, but I keep flipping over though. I don't consider myself to be the other. I consider everybody else to be the other, and sometimes I realize that it depends on who I think I'm writing for, and sometimes I'm an editor on the East Coast versus a editor who's some kind of Latino from maybe LA or even South America. You're dealing with different viewpoints and all that, so I was really glad to sort of to cause a rift between science fiction and the Anglo world, because it was just a little too Anglo. Though I must admit, the New Wave in the British New Wave brought very different viewpoints, because they were writing about different types of English people. Or they were coming from different places, like you say, J.G. Ballard and all these other writers. I was very impressed and influenced by a lot of their work. But the otherness seems to be just part of my existence.
Yeah. Well, as far as like speaking, maybe about your might as well get the question about the lockdown. It's not so much about has the lockdown inspired you. It's more like since the situation with the lockdown and the administration, and it's also ridiculous. I mean, is reality more stranger than fiction? I mean, how can you pull anything from this? How can you top this as far as?
Yeah, we're saying. I keep saying that one of the perks of getting older is that the news seems like science fiction to you. You seem to do that, and we're seem to be going. That's a weird tipping point here. So much of this going on, and luckily the novel I'm working on right now is kind of stranger than what's going on in the world. I'm hoping I seem to be a few steps ahead of it, and I'm not. Going to have to do that. My wife has sort of like had to rethink on when she was working on, because she realized that, oh my God, the world I was writing that I'm setting this novel in no longer exists. So she's going to have to like rethink it and all that, and that has been. Then again, that's kind of been the sort of the mission of science fiction, is that basically you're in this brave new world. And how are you going to survive it? But also that's also a Chicano thing. Chicanos, you often stay at the barrio and that, but also like Chicano knots like me we're also got one foot in the other world and exploring these other places, and that's the nature of the beast.
Have you found a lot of readers among Chicanos, Ernest?
Yeah, it's kind of funny. At first, and in fact, I think still the editors or the publishers are hesitant because they don't think that there's an audience out there, even though like a lot of my readers are Anglos, and I've got people in England, people in people in Russia. I want to talk to some of those Russian people sometimes to find out what they think of my work, because it's just that's got to be so strange. But I noticed when Chicanos find out about my work, they tend to be very, very enthusiastic about it. And there was one time, I was at my grandmother's, it was a party at my grandmother's house in Monterey Park. That's where they used to live in East Southern Monterey Park. And there were a bunch of, I had a bunch of copies of my book to give to the family, and my first novel, CORTEZ on Jupiter. And it was like, they had these other people there who were like friends of friends, and they were, oh wow, that's that. I ended up giving up giving away all those books to Chicanos, and once they find out about me, they get really excited, and I was probably the first one to get to do with a big publisher and get generally distributed, and all that, and but yes, I'm finding also they saved my butt, the Chicano academics and students and all that, particularly in California. They've just had a really great response to me. I did a talk in San Diego State. I think it was a couple of years back, and the sales of the High Aztec, which was the subject of the talk, went to the roof after that. And I was just sort of amazed. So I've got it's like I say, I have trouble convincing the people in New York that this is going on, but I'm glad there are all these alternatives out there. Like I like to say, I keep one foot in the underground so that when the shit hits the fan, I'll have a place to stand. And it's we seem to be living in those times right now. But as I say, still I'm getting published in the middle of this the pandemic.
I mean, many of your books were the topic in Altermundos. I mean, what are your thoughts on Altermundos and being talked about so much? And
well, I'm really glad that all these the academics and the intellectuals are talking about me. This is 20 years ago, in the year 2000, I thought my career was over. I was I got a full-time job at Borders. I wasn't sure what I was going to do with the rest of my life and all that. And even though I was still publishing in weird little places, and suddenly it opened it up, and it opened up on me, and I'm just feeling really good about it. It wasn't always that way. I can say that there were, though I usually get yes, I remember hearing from people saying, the Spanglish, they saying, oh, this is the first time I've ever seen any of these words in print, even though I used them all the time. And believe me, I had a hard time figuring out how to spell a lot of them, because there was no there was no dictionary. There was no I tend to find myself up in that weird territory where the spelling, there isn't conventional spelling, so a lot of the terms that are being thrown around, and that's exciting.
Maybe you could talk to us. I mean, it's something that came up in the panel as well. It's like, science fiction writers usually generally think of readers, like as open-minded and open to new territories. And, like we talked how they seem to be more open to books containing Klingon and Elvish rather than a little bit of Spanglish. I mean,
yeah. Let's see. Well, then again, Klingon and Elvish and are considered sort of sexy languages for the white middle class. They're exotic. They're strange. Like Spanish and Spanglish. That has all these connotations of it being used by people they're afraid of, and just. Also, Spanish has this really bad rap as a low-class language. I remember in school a teacher say, oh no, Spanish is a sort of silver, but French, that's a really classy language, and I was while working at Borders, there was this other employee teaching a French class, and all these ladies would come in and they'd hurt themselves trying to do those French vowels, and I would tell them when they come in to buy and ask for a book by Isabel Allende, I would go, well, that's Allende, and they'd look at me like I was some kind of jerk. I was like, oh, like don't tell me that. Oprah pronounces it this way.
Jenny, what do you have? You have a question, Jenny? Jump in here.
Me unmute you.
Jenny, can you hear me?
Oh,
Unmute Jenny.
She's frozen again.
Frozen in time.
Dang. Okay.
Well, she unfreezes.
Sorry, just a little bit.
Oh, sorry. Good.
Oh, did I unfreeze?
Yeah, go
I
ahead.
hear you now.
Yeah.
Having a whole science fiction experience just in the interview. I was wondering a little bit about, in Smoking Mirror Blues, the relationship between virtual reality, meditation, possession, music, drug use. I mean, it all kind of like, it all comes together, but it's, I don't know, for curious readers, what would you say on some of those connections?
Well, they're subjects I've studied a lot, and I find a fascination for all that sort of thing. I was basically trying in Smoking Mirror Blues. They kept calling me a cyberpunk, so I thought, okay, let me try to do my take on this. And it's probably one of the few times where I actually deliberately was trying to do a cyberpunk thing there. But the whole idea and the way the mind works, though, is another fascinating thing, and how basically different mental states can have it. Because I remember just in studying, writing, I was reading up on like dissociative mental states and that sort of thing. That basically, also the sort of possession. Because I read about voodoo and how people get these different, supremely different entities, personalities taking over their minds, and I find it very just something I have a fascination for, and it's sort of something that science fiction you usually does it in a very simplistic way. Somebody takes over somebody else's mind, or something takes over somebody else's mind, and they act differently, and then they undo it. And I'm not quite sure if it's actually going to work that way if you actually do it. Also, there when you look at the actual voodoo or voodoo as they pronounce it, and actual possession situations, it's an actually real phenomenon that is not really, science hasn't really studied it very much, and it's something happens to people somehow the part of their brain, their mind that is them, gets shut down, and something else takes over. It's something that actually happens, and I've seen it. In younger days when I was in a scene where people would take drugs and all that, you would often see somebody who just suddenly they're a different. It's not them anymore. They're walking around and everything. Next day they wouldn't know about it. I did all that stuff. I did that. So I was in some ways documenting things that I had seen, but in other ways it was just very just stuff I was interested in and studied and all that.
So I mean, that kind of reminds me. You did a lot of research for High Aztec, didn't you? You actually went to Mexico City and did research.
Well, actually, I didn't go. I've been to Mexico City a couple of times, and those two trips kind of changed my life. And I had and a lot of that experience went into High Aztec. I probably would not have been able to write that book if I hadn't been there. And I had. But also, I say I basically ransacked libraries and all that for all the stuff I could find on Nahuatl. I was really lucky. I actually found a book about Aztecismo. So they were Spanish words that were also part Nahuatl, and it was like a little dictionary of them and all that. And okay, a lot of the words in the Espanol in High Aztec were taken directly from that book. I freely admit that when there's something so good, you don't have to invent it. You can take that.
Right.
But yeah.
Well, Smoking Mirror is very much a concept that goes back to Nahuatl cosmography and thought and so forth. Because it's this is something I've learned recently. It's the Nahuatl word for it is Tezcatlipoca, and it means smoking mirror.
Yeah. The mirror.
When I read that, when I saw the title, I said, "Holy cow, this got to be good," because you've got the ancient lore and ancient history, ancient thought working into your stories. That's pretty remarkable.
Yeah, well, I study both, and I often find that there's a place where the ancient and the futuristic come together. And that just fascinates me.
Right.
And now also it's kind of interesting because like in reading what some people are in the reviews of Smoking Mirror, I think that some of them don't even think it's science fiction. They think it's more like they see what happens at the character at the end when Texacopolca takes the as literally the return of Texacopolca, as almost a magic realist type thing, where this and even though I didn't quite think that when I was writing it, I thought, you know what, you could read it and interpret it that way, and I'm not going to argue with them if that's what the way they think it's going, but they say that there is a point where the two opposites come together, and that's one of my fascinations.
Mm.
Are you still planning? Because at the end of Smoking Mirror Blues, he talks about his brother Quetzalcoatl might be coming. Or is that a planned novel? Is that your next novel? Or
well, I had thought of that. I thought of maybe making it like a series where I was going to do a Quetzalcoatl book, and then maybe a Guadalupe book, in which these gods come back and I kind of got thrown off track because literally for a long time I did not have any success in selling those books, and after about 10 years of trying to sell it, I finally did Smoking Mirror with a small press in Oregon, and other writer recommended it to me, and that worked out, and I still have trouble getting I may end up taking small presses because the large presses they just don't seem to think that this stuff is going to make the big money that they want to make.
Yeah.
I've heard you say that they treat you like a talented leper.
Yeah, the most talented leper they ever met. I get praise. I mean, my rejection letters. The first paragraph reads like a rave review, but then it's like, oh, but then I took it to my boss and they said, so I've got this a strange relationship going on there. I was once told that my audience is a noisy minority, and I keep advising them and other minorities to make more noise.
I think there's a problem in. I drove them away.
Okay, there was a dog at my back door, but she doesn't quite want to come in. Okay.
Well, I think there's a problem in, like, if publishers don't support and give the advertising for these works, how do people know they're out there? And it gets
that is the problem. And also say that the weird thing that happened with High AZTECH was that it was no review copies were sent out, and there was only one ad, and it was in the magazine called Locus, and it didn't have any text. It was all this sort of just a picture and no text, even though they had all kinds of quotes from CORTEZ on Jupiter they could have used, and it just also basically, I kept hearing people go, "Oh, is your book out?" I got all the books from Tor that month, and it wasn't in there. And it was just it looked to me like somebody in there decided that this book was going to fail, and fail. But then again, that's happened to me in the past. And what my advice to anybody, if it looks like somebody sends you off to fail, go out and succeed anyways. Don't give up. That seems to be my. The way I've lived.
Maybe I can ask you about your book covers. I mean, as far as because you're an artist yourself, and the re-release of Smoking Mirror Blues, I believe, is the one with the Chicano knot on the front. It's got the it's pretty striking with the. The Texacopolca polka and the jade covering and the skull, and
that I owe all to Jean Marie Stein of Strange Particle Press. She just a sort of this marketing genius, and it was because she wanted basically to have that the Texacopolca mask on the cover, and we talked about it and thought that the idea of putting it basically in a space helmet similar to the Kalaka knot. And basically she found the artists to put together the image and get that going. So that was just a really inspiration there. I usually don't have much control over the covers, and the only one where I really had most control was that edition of my self-published edition of High Aztec. That was a painting by an artist named Del Harris, who actually did the illustration for my first published short story, an amazing story. It was back in like 1972. No, not 1982. Getting time warped here. I saw this was a painting he had done. Actually, kind of funny. He did this painting about the same time that I was writing High Aztec, and years later I saw that and I thought, you know what, I got to put that guy on the cover if I ever do my own version of it. That was just a pretty good thing. But usually I find that if I let the publisher do its thing, that they usually come up with a good cover.
Yeah, I found them very striking. I mean, I remember seeing what I called the future of Otto Loco on the cover of High Aztec. It's like you don't normally see depictions of Chicanos as the scary person and not a protagonist, or as the villain, or thug number 3.
Yeah, it's a strange thing there, and yes, you're kind of invisible, but also they don't often you get someone who outside of our culture, they don't quite believe that you write a character who knows about art and science and culture and all that, and they're also some kind of Latino or Chicano, and you suddenly they go, well, is this believable? Is this character I've had that. I go, oh God, yeah. But it happens less. Things are slowly getting better.
So like on your your drawing of I guess the skull with the Chicano knot with the spacesuit, did you intend that to be Tezcatlipoca on the inside, or is it something that kind of got updated? Or
no, that was just sort of an image I came up. I wanted to do sort of an Aztec type skull and the space helmet with sort of the hot rod features going with the flames and the air intake thing in the top of it. I think at the time when I was doing that, there were all these books coming out about Ed Roth and other the hot rod type artists who basically overlap into the lowrider culture, and there's a lot of cross pollination between those two things. And I was playing on that thing that came up with this image that I think it served me right, and also it serves well as a sort of an icon to use on the internet. Just show people this picture. It kind of gives them a quicker idea of what I'm all about, rather than just a photograph of me. A photograph of just like who's this wacky guy, and that kind of the Kalakanad sort of gives you more idea what my stories are about.
Like the spacesuit Ronfla.
Yeah.
I like that. As I'm thinking here, Jenny, did you have something to mention? I think she's frozen again. Armando?
I have a question. I want to see if Jenny. Well, I guess I had a question because I've also tried my hand. Everybody around the table here, so to speak, has done writing and is. I think Jenny is trying to get in.
Yeah, we're getting some kind of
weird thing
going there. Strange noise with technical.
Would it help if Jenny kind of goes off and then comes back, Scott? You think?
She might need to call in, or actually, let's stop her video, and then it might help her audio. So I've done my best.
Well, let me ask
you up to her
while we're trying to deal with the technology. At some point, it seems to me that a lot of things came together for you, Ernest. You're wanting to write, and I think you said you published like your first short story in '82.
Yeah.
Now, had you been writing stuff pretty consistently and not getting turned down, and finally things kind of came together?
I've been writing
How did
since
that
I was
happen?
about 13. It was, I think that's around 1969. Oddly enough, I was actually published back then. One of the first things publishing was I wrote a letter to a comic book, and it was published, and that was another revelation. For my typewriter to comic book racks all across America, I could do that. And so basically, for a while, I kind of had this part-time hobby of writing letters to comic books, and one of these comic books coming up for sale on eBay or something like that, and one of the things contains a letter by Ernest Hogan. God, I'd be embarrassed to see those letters these days. They're like a 13-year-old babbling about all kinds of stuff. But obviously, from there, that sort of got me on it. So I thought, I can be a writer. I can get published. I can do all these things, and I've sort of also writing after that became sort of a different thing for me. I was writing with the idea of getting published rather than just writing is stuff that's coming off the top of your head.
What's some things that keep you going after, like you're saying, you had some setbacks and rejections?
God, that's a sort of an interesting thing there. Well, one thing I've had the support of people like my wife, which is probably that's been a good thing. But also I don't know. It's like I've got this big imagination that's always doing everything and all that. And unless I'm doing something like writing or drawing or that, I just don't know what to do with it. And I tend to also, you leave me alone and I start entertaining myself. That's kind of one of the things like with the pandemic and the lockdown, is that I come up with ideas and all that, and even at the most depressed time, when I was just feeling it couldn't work and all that, the ideas kept coming, and I just kind of have to keep doing that, and it's and it might be that basically just doing other things like being a janitor or having some other type of working in a library or some other job just isn't quite enough for me. I kind of need more, and the creativity, the writing, and all that really does it for me.
All right.
Jenny, are you back?
Still frozen.
She's still frozen in time.
Yeah.
I mean, do you have any advice for writers out there, like other Latino writers, writers of color, maybe trying to?
There's Jenny again.
Jenny's trying to. So,
maybe she could type a question in the chat. I can read it off.
can she hear us?
Well, advice is that, well, actually, it's kind of in my I didn't really have much of a choice. I had to kind of go for the Anglo publishers and try to get published there. I think that for young Chicano Latino writers, I would suggest they try these other places, the small places that we're seeing all over the place, and the publishers, and give them a try and go out there too. I think that would probably be a thing. I don't know that there if we look at the bestseller lists that are out right now, we probably don't see any Latino writers, on the bestseller list. We can always argue about why that's the case, but I do think, hey, you should try sending your work everywhere, even the send your work to the New Yorker, send your work to all the markets that you think are too good for you. Yeah, they'll probably reject you, but yeah, you'll be better for it. You'll have that experience of having faced them and being willing to do that. but but I think that also there's just a lot more opportunities these days. There are markets where you can probably get experience, just sort of like the X fiction contest. That's just something I would recommend for them. That's just a wonderful thing that they're doing, that you're doing, and but yes, but also just keep doing it. Keep.
Absolutely. Well, I want to put in a word for the sponsor, and that is, we really started at the beginning of the year, in fact, to do a publishing. We have a publishing house called the Somos and Escrito Literary Foundation Press, otherwise known as SELF, SELF Press. That just came, naturally. I didn't have to even think about trying to get an acronym for it. But yeah, we're looking for, obviously we have a certain interest in science fiction or X fiction. We have the contest, which is going to come up pretty soon again. So keep that in mind, Ernest, all right? We'd love to see you something in. Of course, you've been our judge for the last first couple of years. So I don't know who's going to judge your stuff if we get something from you. That would be a real task, new challenge. But seriously, we are very much open to all genre. And because of our interest, Jenny and Scott, myself, I started reading science fiction when I was in high school. And that was in the 60s, 50s and late 50s, 60s, into the 60s. And I used to, save a lot of the pulp, magazines. Over the years, they got lost or thrown away or something. But I wish I had some of them still. But I've been collecting science fiction novels and writers for a long, long time. So I really appreciate, that you've brought together this other dimension, so to speak, into your writing, and it's. I think it's encouraged a lot of other people. We get ability of publishing a science fiction book in the near future. So, keep your fingers crossed for us on that one.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I was gonna ask Ernest, do you have any plan? I mean, you write science fiction. Do you have any plans for any kind of like fantasy or any kind of different genre?
Yeah, I do have actually the latest thing that was published by me was a story called Kuka, which is sort of a story about a female Mexican wrestler who ends up in this nexus for monsters in Arizona, in a small town in Arizona, and it's published in let me get that's it. Well, American Monsters Part 2. It's sort of an international thing where they're doing monsters from all the world and having people from the places where those monsters are from write about them, and it's part of a long series of African monsters, all kinds of from all over the world. I forget how many volumes they have so far, and that one's kind of more of a fan. I've done fantasy. For some reason, most of my stuff tends to be science fiction. I also went through a time when I was just fed up with science fiction, so I wrote a detective novel, and basically I was told, this one editor said, well, if you ever write a straight commercial novel, send it to me. And so I sat there and I went to my agent at the time and said, okay, what do you think she means by straight commercial novel? Because I had no freaking idea. And so I tried to write a sort of mainstream Ernest Hogan novel without any science fiction or fantasy in it, and it bounced around New York for years. And finally, I was told, well, that's probably, I'm sorry, Ernest, but this book is probably too weird for anybody in New York to publish. So I said, oh, well. And also, but I don't know, people tend to think I'm being weird science fiction stuff, even when I'm doing nonfiction and journalism. It's very strange. It must be the way I see things.
maybe you can tell us, I know you're working on a new book, and maybe you can tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, it's called, okay, ZEX, Z-Y-X, and then that's the short, because it's the name of an app that in this novel that is causing all this changing in society. And there's an or, bring me the brain of Victor Theraman. Now, Victor Theraman was sort of an alter ego I created when I started publishing in weird little publications that didn't pay. I figured I would start him as sort of allow me to be an alter, and whenever I create a character based on myself, they go off and take on a life of their own. And I've been writing a whole bunch of Victor Theraman stories, and this is kind of trying to define that universe. And depending on who I'm trying to sell it to, it's either a book about a aging Chicano science fiction writer who's lost track of where the science fiction ends and his life begins, or it's a slapstick comedy about the singularity, which is basically technology taking on its own, taking control of itself and developing itself on its own. And you know, I'm also, it allows me to do all kinds of weird satirical stuff about society and having fun with that and everything. And I'm you know, working on it. I'm even working on it through the quarantine. Just that I try to write about 100 words, a minimum of about 100 words a day. Though of course there are always days when I can't do that, but I keep going forward. And also I'm having to right now go back and realize there are gaps in the subplots that I have to fill in, and that's going to get probably too complicated to really explain here as to what I'm doing. But but yes, I'm feeling good. Also, these days I'm writing the novels I want to write rather than trying to write a bestseller, you know, because that doesn't work, you know.
Don't you have, was it Speculative Fiction for Dreamers, Latinx, Speculative, I can't remember the anthology coming out. Do you have 2 stories coming out in that?
Well, actually, it's actually two. One is Latinx Rising, which is which is actually a reprinting of with a Latin at with the at sign, Rising. They published it like under that title a few years back. That one has a story that was, like I said, it was supposed called Under the Texas Radar with Paco and Los Frittales, which is basically the origin story of a character who I've written stories in Analog and other about, and he's Paco Cohen Mariachi of Mars, and it kind of my take on interplanetary colonialism, and basically having like you know people from Earth being taken to Mars to do the dirty work, and I guess it's been basically that story is basically how he got from Texas to Mars, and it's a funny story. Most of my stuff are, and the other one is the Dreamers anthology. Is the story that one is those is titled those rumors of cannibalism and human sacrifice have been greatly exaggerated. That one is inspired by my travels in New Mexico, and basically things I've seen there that just inspire the idea of what the future would be like there, and having it also be very different and you know, I'm having two young they would call them Hispano you know, truck drivers, a man and a woman, and they pick up a hitchhiker who's actually an anthropologist from back east, and also Aztlan and America have split, so there's actually a different country down there. And it's you know the clash of cultures and all that.
Mm.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah.
Well, I think we lost Jenny.
Oh, sorry about that.
We're not blaming you. Let's see. Do you have anything else, Armando?
Well, Yeah, I think I'd be interested in just knowing where you shirt,
Shirt.
the shirt you're wearing.
I, I think this is one my sister Linda got it for me. It was I think I got two shirts at the same time, and I'm kind of confused with it. This might be one my sister gave me, and it's a it's a nice shirt. And people they know I like shirts like this, so I keep getting them. And also my sister Linda,
It's kind of otherworldly.
yeah, it's kind of well. Also, she once told me, I think Mexicans like science fiction better than white people. And I thought, really, why? He said, well, I show your books to my white friends, and they just aren't interested in it. They go, oh yeah, that's good. But then when I show your books to my Mexican friends, they go, oh wow, they got to write your name down and find out. So that was how she believed that Mexicans like science fiction more than white people.
Well, I certainly think there's a desire once they know about it. Once they find out about it.
And breaking that barrier, because that's a part of the thing that the publishers back east just have no idea how to get to this audience, which is kind of strange. Since we're like up to our eyeballs in this audience. I could go out and there's like low riders next door, and we were taking, my wife and I were taking a walk this morning, and there were people arguing in Spanish, and so it's like I think these people are all over the place.
Exactly. I think when someone can write science fiction and good, it's anybody can pick it up and enjoy it. And it just happens to have some characters in it that are based on, Mesoamerican history and culture and so forth. And the characters actually speak Spanish and Spanglish and Nahuatl and the whole range. It kind of gives the lie to, I think there's a lot of sense out there among publishers that we're kind of one-dimensional. We write the migrant story, immigrant story, and that's about it. Or we're all, characters in, what is that? There's a TV show on right now called, I don't even want to mention what it's called, but we're all hoodlums, basically all hoodlums. And,
Mayans. Oh God, yeah. The
Mayans.
The biker gang. Yeah. Oh God, yeah.
Of all the names to give it, Mayans.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, like oh God, yeah.
Right. So you've kind of broken the mold, Ernest. I think, yeah, very much so.
Like I try to do, but again, I'm kind of not that mold. I tend not to be what people expect. When you tell them, oh, there's a Chicano writer, I'm not what they're expecting, and I've always considered that to be a good thing. But but it's that the publishers don't know with the whole American dirt thing. The fact that they needed to find someone who was sort of Anglo enough, so the audience, the Oprah audience would not be put off by, and so to write a book that basically that audience would like, and the bestseller I can say is a genre in itself. You kind of say it has these definite borders and things that lines that they will not cross. Now that also changes because people didn't think Harry Potter would be a bestseller, all these other things that sort of change change the world. At first people didn't think they were going to be popular. They didn't think Star Wars would make money. They didn't think so. I think we've got to sort of keep reminding people of that also telling them that this isn't just we're not just these poor people who need to be catered to because we're impoverished and lacking in culture. Is that basically we've got some stuff going here and people are going to be interested in it when they find out about it. I actually think everything I write is going to change the world. Going to go take the world by storm, and I'm often surprised when I don't get that reaction.
I think every writer wants to do that, change the world.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, listen, this has been really a delight, very educational and informative. I don't know, maybe there's one, Scott, I'll give you one more question because I know he's probably dying to ask one more question. Scott?
Well, first, it's I should say happy birthday, right, Armando? Is today's your actual birthday?
Yes, today's my birthday, yes.
Yeah.
Happy birthday, Armando.
I'm 39 years old.
You're 39. Wow, a couple years older than me.
That's good for a joke.
Wow.
Pressure's on.
The pressure's on.
Well, listen, we can save questions for another time. Actually, I think we'll.
Well, hopefully we can get together that panel again and do more of this science fiction kind of roundtables.
Yeah, that would be great. Yeah, I think we need that more of that sort of thing going on. Yeah.
Maybe I want to ask you like one final question. I mean, you're called the father of Chicano science fiction, and I know. I mean, do you feel any kind of burden or responsibility from that, or is it just kind of like annoying?
Well, it was actually started out as a joke, on Facebook, and I sort of it sort of gives me the I kind of get a kick out of it. It kind of it's been a thing, but also it seemed like I was the only one for a while. Like when I first started doing stuff for the blog, we went out to try to find and there are other people, other writers. Unfortunately, I'm blanking out of their names who actually published stuff before me, and that was sort of the thing. I'm probably the first writer to actually have a career in it as a Chicano science fiction writer, and it's but it's like being the first Chicano on the moon. It's some bit of notoriety, and also it does kind of help break the ice when people try to figure, well, what are you about, Ernest? I can kind of give them this good thing here that's a little different from the usual story people tell about when they're about becoming a writer.
Definitely have a great story to tell. But listen, we're gonna just cut it off here for now.
Okay.
And get back again together sometime soon.
Yeah. Let me know what's going on.
We appreciate your time and wish you well with the new books.
Yeah.
Writings, and I hope that we can have you featured in the magazine. Obviously, we want to do that, and maybe sometime as we develop our publishing, we'll even attract you to publish, with us.
Hey, I'm definitely interested.
Okay, all right. Thanks, Scott, and till next time. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye now.
Yeah, bye.